I feel like doing a rant today. A few things on my mind. Sometimes I do get lost in just watching YouTube videos, and it is really an amazing, incredible knowledge base. I mean, when I was a kid, for example, I books were everything. They were my only kind of escape because we didn't even have a television. Every now and then, my mom started renting one, and for like a week, and then she would rent like a VHS and a bunch of movies. That was usually on the weeks that my dad would be working late, overnights and stuff. So I did get to watch some movies, but pretty much books were everything, and I read a lot fast. I went from in first grade in Texas to not being able to read because I didn't go to kindergarten. My mom thought it was unnecessary. I think she didn't go to kindergarten either. So I entered the public school system a year later, and I do remember, in fact, when I was injected. And I was so angry. Oh man, so angry. It felt so wrong. I remember that feeling of it feeling just wrong. Like I was violated. And this is as a child. And I also remember them examining me, making sure for some reason that I wasn't abused or something. Like I had to pull down my pants. I don't understand this. I don't understand that invasion of privacy. But that was in Texas. So I began to read a little bit later than other people. I think I may have learned my ABCs. I don't remember if my... yeah, I'm sure I did. But I hadn't learned how yet to phonetically combine all these letters into words. So I learned that all in first grade. And I was, other kids had already knew how to read, and so they could read the blackboard a little bit, and I couldn't. I do remember one of my first words, and I love the word, was cat. I think I always had a love for cats over dogs. But let's see. So by the end of first grade, I remember there was some challenge, like you would get rewarded or something if you read so many books. And so I remember reading a whole ton of books. Now my memory is kind of failing me, though. That doesn't make sense. So I thought I was in first grade when we left Texas because of the lightning strike. But it must have been that challenge. And then we left somewhere after school had stopped and ended up in Charlotte. We didn't know where we were going. My father had considered Atlanta until they checked it out, and then was like, this doesn't feel good. And we also had an uncle of mine following behind, and it's interesting, like the blind faith, but they had a large sum of money. So what happened with the lightning strike was a month before, our next door neighbor's like trailer, that's what it was, like a camper or single wide burned, and he literally escaped without a shirt on his back, lost everything, I think. And so my my father gave him a shirt. But uh, so my mother then thought maybe it would be wise to get fire insurance, and they did that, and then our house burned by was said to be a lightning strike. We weren't there, and we were at my grandparents'. My dad was working, and my mom received a call from a neighbor who apparently knew how to get hold of us. It's kind of interesting when you think about that world where your neighbor knows your family's numbers or something. It's interesting. And this is outside of Austin and Round Rock. Good luck randomly finding that, though. That would take fucking days. Going through microfiche. So, anyways. We had like 30,000 with us. So I guess maybe that's another reason my uncle tagged along. Maybe a little bit more security. He was done with Austin too. They were suffering a slight minor recession at the time, commercial recession. But Charlotte, on the other hand, was booming. All the banks were moving down to either Charlotte or Atlanta because New York City was so fucking expensive. And so there was this trend, and commercial real estate in downtown Charlotte became really valuable, and it blew up. And people started moving there, and it was a pretty good place. You know, Charlotte had its crime, that's for sure, and they were all, you know, the crime was all like inner city stuff, you know. And there's violence, you know, and Charlotte public school system had the Charlotte Mecklenburg school system had this policy of mixing everybody. So this is one of the big reasons my mother decided to homeschool me, was because they were literally going to ship me out 40 minutes away to get to a school where we could be mixed. And I could already see it, dude. Like, I could already see, like, I've been attacked, like, randomly, you know, multiple times in my life. So yeah, I could already see it back then. Like, it's disruptions, it's all these things, and it's just not a good environment. I mean, people that we knew were speaking about, you know, just constant school fights, and it's terrible policy. Let people be. Charlotte did have a magnet school system, though, and I had a friend who was now passed, and I have some regrets that I didn't get to really speak with him before he went. And, you know, repair bridges that had been kind of damaged. But this friend of mine, he had gone to a magnet school, and he was actually really bright, from a single mother. Didn't know his father. And he showed me a lot of things about computers. His mother had worked for Pac Bell or something, and was lent a company computer, which he brought over quite a bit. He was also homeschooled, so I mean, he was a close friend, but she was very strict on him. And then when he chose to leave the religion, she stopped communicating with him. It was very hard on him. And that was after he had lost his wife. I think cheated on him, and which broke his marriage, and which led to him probably wondering questions like, here I was this perfect model, J-Dub, and he was an elder at a very early age, I think. But yeah, now here's a ministerial servant is what they call it, like the little middlemen, or it was not exactly middlemen, but the guy below the elder is like elder in training, without the authority of the elders, but the anyways, like as a teenager, he was a model. And then whatever life events and then alcohol just tore him down. That and his mother's, not offering support. Fucking awful. Fucking awful, dude. I mean, that's like the number one person in his life refusing to talk to him. All because he can see the hypocrisy. He wasn't fully awakened. I don't think he fully left. Not love, not at all what Yeshua taught. But he was a close friend of mine, and we lost contact, after I stopped being one, and then found him on Facebook, and I did during my travels, back in 2015. I got to see him and a number of other old friends from back then who had left, but not the ones that had stayed in. Obviously, I would have enjoyed their company too, and reminisce about things and see where their lives have gone. But that's not the way it is. You're in or you're out. But so I had friends, and he was a knowledgeable person, taught me things about computers I wouldn't had otherwise dived into probably if I had the interest, but needed someone to show me, which is important. Just someone sometimes showing you how to do things, lending a hand, letting you use their equipment. And he must have been lonely too as a single child. I imagine with his overbearing mother. And who wouldn't just allow anybody to associate with them either, not just because they were in the so-called truth. Doesn't mean that they would, she was the strict kind, so you had to, check out. There were many others that didn't, or were kind of, they're weary of, and a lot of times it was just because one spouse, if it wasn't, if they were married and you had a spouse who wasn't in the truth, then you're not shunned, but you're put in a separate category usually, unless you were a man who, no, usually even then they still weren't put in positions of ministerial or elders because they couldn't get their household in order, kind of thing. Or women who were pioneers could ascend into that normalcy just because they're husband. But you wouldn't go hang out at her house usually, especially if they're DF'd. That's a whole nother thing. That's the politics that I grew up with, not knowing, of course, or understanding. Um, so yeah, he was in a category of his own. She was always his mother was always pioneering, but he wasn't allowed that many friends once he started homeschooling. But he was put in that magnet school, and it was pretty cool. He got a lot of opportunities I wish I had at the time. But on the other hand, I didn't realize what I had that he didn't have. It's interesting how that works, you know. People don't realize what they have. Like, if you have a close, even if it's a small um, circle of friends who are there for you, live nearby, and you do things with them. I mean, and you're content with them. You know, they're at your level that you need people to be at. And there's not too much drama, etc. Unless you like drama. I prefer not. um, but like, you don't realize what you have necessarily. There's people who have that and just don't understand what it is like to not have it. And that's again part of the disconnect I keep repeating about between men and women. It's important that men continue to reinforce that there is this disconnect until awareness is there, and then we need to forget about the disconnect. Just like the whole race thing. You know, it was important that we had awareness of the racial inequalities and differences, right? The rights, different rights. Are you fucking kidding me? I mean, that needed to be fixed. You know, I applaud every single person and their stories and their pursuit of liberty, okay? And once that was won, and it was, most of that was won at the end of Martin Luther King's era. Most of it. And then, of course, it went way overboard. Way overboard. And killing MLK was a fucking huge mistake. Because he could have at least had remained a leader for that community. They needed somebody during the 80s. Instead, what they got was shit, man. They got so fucking consumerized in that era. I mean, because when you're looking to validate yourself and you're primarily focused on external projections of that, then it's about showing the bling, right? It's about driving a nice car. It's about showing success. And so that little need became this grossly out of proportion. I mean, it's gross, right? The whole like rapper thing is fucking gross, dude. I mean, if you can't see it on his face, that is gross. The way that, and then you could say the same about a lot of musicians who don't do rap, like, but to be wearing all that stuff as like a symbol of like pride, like, ooh, like, it's not even fine, you know, like, I understand showing off a fine piece of crafts work, you know, that only wealthy can, but it's not fine. It's just a symbol of greed. And MLK could have steered them away from that. It just shows you, like, really short-term, fucking huge-ass mistakes, man. You foster pride by accomplishment, by success, and in doing something great, not by not by this stupid external manifestation of greed. So they were hijacked, and it became pretty apparent, dude. Buy your votes, control the people, destroy the family unit, destroy people by doing it, and then they recreated it, and it wasn't even good. I mean, they're not Japanese, right? They're not going to be able. They have different capabilities, right? The Japanese were pretty much subjugated by their economics. They rose out of it by doing what they're good at, which is using their mind and their creative ability and their organizing and their hard work, and they rose out of that. But when you emphasize competition, what you end up is disharmony, and you end up with cannibalism. So they were destroyed. I still think that they should have been offered a choice, free of charge, with basic provisions, and maybe at least some token amount for the years of slavery that they endured, or if they were born into it. And they should have been offered a choice to go back to Africa. I really think that would have been the appropriate, one of the appropriate restitutions at the time. And the other would have been to offer get land, obviously, and some basic help, different times. It's a complicated situation. I mean, now we've all been just massively mind-fucked. If you understand what propaganda has done to us, both through the media and through the indoctrination programs of education, so-called education, if you understand what that's done to us as a whole, then that's a much bigger crime than any subgroup of people, and it affects all of us, right? Like it's not just this group of people type thing. This group of people whose ancestors were enslaved. Some of them were prisoners, some of them were captured by their own people, usually, and then sent to the Caribbean, where, and this is one of the great memes that have been around in the conspiracy forums for a long time. That if true and were brought to light, it seems to me like would be a real nail on the coffin. But is who some of these slave owners were. Like there's mention that a certain period of time that they controlled 40% of of the slave trade coming out of the Caribbean. So the middlemen, essentially, or the ones that actually owned the ships sometimes, going to Africa, ship owners. Ship owners made it happen, right? They were the ones that told the captains what to do. Captains rarely ever own their own ship unless they're pirates. You know. Speaking of piracy, there's some part of me that just has trouble with getting a license. And so as I journey more into different forms of speaking, there's a part of me that just wants to be a pirate, and I'm really tempted, keeping it low. But then again, I mean, knowing how many satellites are up there, looking down, recording every fucking bounce with hypersensitive fucking arrays, I don't know. Is it worth? But I do need practical experience. There's only so much you can do without ever pushing the button, Which comes down to pushing the button, right? Massive energy shift on the 12th. And yeah, I didn't want to see it happen. Situation. And there's a lot of other battles beyond solving the national, political, economic ones. There's a lot of things that people are going to have to decide upon about what's, how to what's appropriate use of land, for example. What's the appropriate way to live? How do we do this if we're not... how do we foster a culture where people desire, right? Desire to participate in community activities that is beneficial for all, right? How do we foster a culture of volunteerism where not only will people volunteer their time, but they volunteer their resources? And I'm thinking of a world, of course, beyond money, although I still see precious metals likely possibly being used as trade. But maybe it won't be that. We don't need to be in that mindset. How do we get to that volunteerism, fully, completely mindset of how do I make sure that their needs are still met? How do, it's the mindset of looking out for others. I don't necessarily mean security. I mean looking out to make sure that others are having a good existence, right? If you see somebody in pain, if you can, try to help them, right? If you see somebody thirsty, you offer them water. If you see somebody needing, shivering, you offer them a jacket or your own body warmth or whatever, right? those are things that we don't know how to do for some reason because we've been highly conditioned. Super highly conditioned. This is the highest level of conditioning that's ever existed as a whole. That at least I'm aware of. And I'm not saying that other cultures didn't do shit like, I don't know, kneel down all fucking day long, or automatically kneel because somebody walks by, and if you dare look them in the eye, they're gonna kill you. Like, yeah, I understand. We come from some roots that are pretty fucked up. Okay, humans have been fucked up for a long time. I don't see, though, is people offering real solutions or people really looking to get to the bottom of what it is that is not working, you know? I see a lot of directions. Oh, let's solve this problem. Let's solve that problem. But what I don't see is a unified, let's go here. Let's go from this guy following a fucking mouse track, pretty much, you know, through the wilderness. Let's actually make this a trail. We don't want it to be a road. We don't want it to be a road. We have to keep a division point, right? There's a certain amount of awareness, and that's what's really teaching me in this situation I'm at now, which, you know, I don't see it being I don't see it working. And I did just go, like, I had a pretty bad month last month. You know, a lot of anger created from sadness, undulating, just, you know, and stuff that is, like, for ordinary people, if they registered that, like, they would spend rest of their life thinking about it. If that was, like, you know, it would, like, but these are normal occurrences for me already. Not totally normal, though. Not to the point that it's normalized. It still has an impact on me. And, no, I don't mean just energetically or any of those things. I mean, like, it impacts me. Especially, I don't need to go back into that stuff, but so my situation here isn't great. I just showed a part of myself that I don't like showing to people, and which is, you know, just needing my own space and time, but really kind of trapped again by money. Instead of just going off into the woods right now, I'm still needing to find ways to trade my time for money, which isn't what I want to do. And so I think I'm going to make a clear distinction, and I'm unwilling to do that. I'm going to set at least a set. I'll do this much X, you know, as because what I see happening is it doesn't matter what your skill set is. It doesn't matter if you're worth $100 an hour like I once was with my own business. Like, it doesn't matter that even doing things that, okay, I'm only worth $50 an hour, right? It doesn't matter to them that you're doing it for a fraction of what you're worth. What they start to see is a servant. Like, I didn't come here to this piece of land to be a servant. I can make a lot of money out there. I came here to, okay, after you asking me to come to your land, like, which I had another living situation where I wouldn't have had to pay rent. I just had to help a little bit on that land. And it was a better living situation, for sure. in a lot of ways. But I saw potential at this piece of property I'm on, and I helped her. And in fact, when it comes down to it, there's more to this that has to do with some dreams. But I'm not willing to take second under somebody who's less competent than me, myself. Like, I am one to be patient and give respect to elders. But when I begin to see like neural decline, or I just recognize that their ability to process information is just not at the same, even close. And I'm here as kind of a long term, like, okay, I want to set up communities. I want to have a chair when the music stops, you know? So I'm willing to devote everything I have, all my energy, towards that purpose. All I expect is that my needs are met. However, when you begin on that line, and you don't see progress towards it. In fact, you see just obstacles and barriers, which is what happened here. There's projects I began for a good amount of energy. I mean, clearing blackberries is like, I've gotten a lot better at it, and various techniques, but I had, the amount of blackberries I cleared, and I put them all in a massive bundle outside and burned them. The amount of blackberries I cleared was huge, right? I did so in one area that was a garden space. After she told me I could use the area of her garden, and my own personal garden, and I'm like, okay, cool. I'll clear this area, these old beds that hadn't been used, even though it was just a giant mess, And before I got to the next step of like doing something with all the grass, which is a big step in itself, without a good rototiller, it was going to be difficult. And again, just simple little things like that, like I'm on a farm and there's not a heavy duty rototiller. Even if you're going to no-till, you still might need to break up the soil sometimes, right? I don't know. She put a stop to it. And it was getting to be late spring, but she put a stop to it. Oh, I don't want to water or anything down there, even though there are hoses already down there. And I would be taking care of my own garden. Durr, right? And at that point, I probably should have just said, okay, adios. But I'm a patient person, and I try, and but the projects, it's just the things, and I see things happening that I can only say that seem to be out of spite, like, and it's just that's not workable, doing things that will cost me more time later. Yeah, it's like if you want me to be a manager of your farm, and make money. You have to give me resources. I expect my needs to be met, which is when she reneged on the deal, which I saw in the dream. I saw some of that. To the point where, okay, you don't have enough for me to do for me to live here, and I don't know if I want to stay. Just the weirdness of things, and that come out after living with people for a few months. It's one of those things. When you're traveling, you run across this. You're always going to run across this, and then you're always going to ask yourself, is it worth staying here? I've had my time in this area, and the rain of the last couple of days has shown me maybe I don't want to be here this winter. Maybe it's time to go somewhere else. But it's a good area. I really like this area for a lot of cool reasons. Are there people here that I really that are at the level? People closing in, that are waking up. Maybe where I was, I don't know, 12 years ago. At least at the, or 14 years ago, at that kind of the physical, okay, what do I need to start thinking about? Oh yeah, I do realize I need some friends to do this with, because they've seen enough terrible movies by now, to impress upon them how bad this can all go down. Or how great and amazing. This could be the most glorious moment of humanity. This could be it. The complete and total turnaround. This moment, we're here, dude. All we have to do is have the fire going. And if it's going and it's expanding, it will reach those other hard to play, like places like China, North Korea. It will reach it. Those places will come down too. Once they realize they have the entire backing of the world, those hard to play, they'll come down. They can't spread themselves out. And without anyone to trade with, those countries are still dependent. The rulers will be overthrown, and we can start this whole world with a whole new way of existence. We can put the old religions behind us, because they'll have been done. They only lead up to this point, in a sense, right? And I'm not saying the Muslims are going to be, they're not. They are going to be a serious issue. They're deeply controlled, and there's, 2 billion of them or something? It sounds insane, but practicality will make it happen. We are going with the natural order of things. And so when disorder around us is going on, and we are listening inside, and we're collectively, integratively, doing what we need to do, we will become stronger than all that disorder. We will be the light in the darkness. Every group of us will be a beacon for those that are looking for it. But we'll have already established a working, foundation. It'll be a living temple, essentially. Living through all of us. And we'll be taken care of. And those of us that die will die doing the greatest thing they can do, which is truly actually helping humanity in a direction that works. All these other people have pieces, we need to join pieces together and make something that works. And I'm beginning to see steps in that way, but what I also saw was a hesitancy, just like I see here, a hesitancy of someone who is unwilling to step out for someone who is more competent, or even to welcome into the pack, because they realize in some senses that they will have to relinquish a little bit of control. Established hierarchies never love it when outsiders come in, unless they're in kind of a panic mode. If everything seems to be flowing okay, it doesn't have to be, it can be completely just like it was last time, no growth at all. But for a lot of people, that's okay to them. And think that they are doing just fine. But they're still like, they're the gatekeepers, because they need to open up and invite others. We need to invite others, because what I saw is a lot of the pieces we need, but not all of the pieces that we need. And we do need to live together. We need to figure out how to get that stuff done, because it's going to require tight quarters, and we're going to have to be able to do things at a moment's instant during the height of the disorder. It's going to seem like disorder, but it will be orderly, because there's higher forces directing everything too. There's rules to everything, and people, it's going to be interesting, because people are going to be praying the most they've ever prayed. There's going to be some interesting things happening. I really don't want to see the seas turn black. They're polluted enough. But we do need to separate those, and we need for them to separate themselves, right? We need them to do the separating for us, because we don't actually want the blood on our hands. It's an interesting dilemma, and before it gets out of hand, it needs to be stopped. But people need to understand how close we are, and unfortunately, they do need to see the devastation. I just saw a video today of ground footage of northern Gaza, and is as bad as what we saw in Syria. It's genocide, you know. It's really sad. Wasteful. And they're doing what they think they have to do to but they don't even understand the first bit of it. It's all ego driven nonsense. They're not the ones. They're not the ones. You know, they don't know what it's like to be a shepherd, right? They don't know what it's like to do a menial job or even a skilled, labor-intensive job. They don't understand those things. They have no compassion for the slaves. It is kind of what scares them, I think, the most is for there to be an outsider or something greater than any of them that understands them, understands power, understands how they have achieved it. And also understands the emptiness of it now. There's this emptiness of it. In that pursuit, you know. I pursued it as a means, and not as his own goal. That was the difference. And that's probably the most frightening thing. I saw the problems and I looked for solutions. I recognized that violent solutions were not an answer. It would only ever help those you're fighting against. And that it is an information war, obviously. But even that whole concept is one of their own concepts, because it's separating itself from what it is that we're actually doing, which is finding and discovering ways to exist outside of the system of indoctrination that we came from. And, you know, it's kind of just... We're not going to get it perfectly right. But those of us who are being paid close attention to, we have to find a way. We have to find the ways to settle major differences. Like, I didn't choose who I followed my path, right? I didn't choose the whom. So I had to find a way to work with what I was shown, right? May not have gone about it the best way. We never know. I don't know. I mean, maybe this is all fate. Every single thing. There's no free will at all. Or maybe I've made the most enormous mistakes, completely contrary to my own intentions. which again could be fate. Could be that I'm a puppet. You could use some Gnostic names for the puppeteer. You could use the Roman invention. It's not Roman, but the way that they combine the mythology. Anyways, there's lots of ways to explain it. And who's to say which one is right? I forgot where I was going with that. Unfortunately, I can't go backwards while I'm recording. That is the unfortunate side effect of using certain plants. My memory is better, or at least was better. And again, I can't tell which is from aging. Or what I've ingested through my life. Would I do it differently? Well, I don't know. I recognize that it's a certain. I recognize that I'm using it to maintain. To keep my anxiety down more than anything, but also because of my boredom, and I like to go places in my mind, and it allows me to do that. But yeah, the anxiety is killer. And you work through it, but I still always feel like I'm running out of time. It's a terrible thing to have in your head, and yet maybe I am. Maybe it's done. Maybe that's what the energy shift I felt. Because I do feel different again. Maybe I'm just going between the cycles, night and day. But hey, so this current situation here, probably not going to stay. Just seems like I don't see a direction for it really. People need to step away. They need to relinquish control to the next generation at the proper time. She didn't have that opportunity, and I'm not going to go into details of why. But it's just people don't always realize how unlivable they are, unworkable, and I recognize that about myself too. I'm getting to that point of okay, I have to set these limits on people, because people's natural tendencies, if they don't understand right up front that you mean business, they will just. Now, that's not always the case, My first time stint in New Mexico, or was that my second? I guess second, if you think about, I was born there. My second in Española was, I had a good working relationship with the owner of the farm, but it did get strange, the place I was staying. which the owner of the farm had mostly arranged for me. But when the point at which they're like, okay, solstice, we're having people over, we want our space back. And I felt it was time for me to go too. Because why would I want to go look? Why would I want to stay there? There was no reason to stay. Solstice thing was it. I got to see it, recognize the truth of it. It seems like that people are just whores, you know? And that's not what I want to see in any community that I participate in. Spirituality should never be sold. Should. There. Said it again. Spirituality needs to remain separate from any type of physical commerce. It's one thing to trade one's time, but it should never be it needs to never be a barrier. You understand? With, of course, the most egregious examples would be like the whole celebrity sci-fi cult, you know, which, of course, has affiliations with Crowley, too. So who knows what he picked up on and what he did. Who knows? Well, I think that's enough ranting. Oh yeah, the last thing, yeah. You can do it well, really cheap, I found. Really easily. Using just water, apparently. You could use a pressure washer and do wells like up to like 40 feet, maybe further, who knows. Well, that's kind of significant. If you have a piece of land that you have a low water table, you know, like less than 20, 30 feet, then you can do your own well in a day with ease, just using water pressure and some pipes, for mostly just the cost of the pipes, which you'd end up using. That's like a savings of $9,500. I don't know. It depends. Maybe they wouldn't charge you as much for doing a short well, but I'm pretty sure they're not going to come out for less than $5. You know, even for an hour's work. You know. So that's the thing, and we got to figure out ways to do this collectively, integratively with our own skill sets. Be willing to be egalitarian. Egalitarianism is what I saw missing. I understand for us individualistic types, it seems contradictory. It's not. You're not being farsighted enough to see why it's not contradictory. Ayn Rand had it wrong in some ways. Well, you know what? Okay, I'm going to take that back because I never read Atlas Shrugged or Fountainhead. You know, I don't know, maybe I just didn't get... I watched movies, and I did read Anthem. This is a short one. But, yeah. We need to be egalitarian. I've seen it at Rainbow. It works. We don't want Rainbow. I mean, some of the rainbow people we do want, they have some amazing skill sets. But we don't want all the riffraff. We want people who are conscious and have most of their problems dealt with. Not that we can't help with the other ones. Once we have community established, we need a strong core. So that's what I'm here for. I'm still struggling with my own stuff, but any person as in my situation would have difficulty with it. No matter how conscious, no matter what, it would still impact you. Varying degrees. So I'm doing my best here, and might be moving on, looking for new directions. So we'll see. Adios.